Boxing experts have shared their final predictions for the Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn fight. Over 30 years since their legendary fathers captivated the UK with one of boxing's fiercest rivalries, Eubank Jr. and Benn are ready to reignite the feud, this time with their own fists, at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London this Saturday. In the lead-up to their long-awaited showdown, postponed since 2022 due to Benn's failed test, the simmering tension between the fighters flared once again on Tuesday, as they came face-to-face during the Grand Arrivals event at the Pelagon in Canary Wharf. For both fighters, this clash goes far beyond the pursuit of victory. It's a battle to honor family legacies and finally close the chapter on one of British boxing's most iconic and unresolved rivalries.
But one thing I want you to understand, there's no anger involved.
Yeah.
None of that whatsoever. Yeah. Just his passion, his ferocity, his determination, his will to win.
The air sizzled with tension as the two men squared up, the weight of generations pressing between them. This wasn't just a clash of fists. It was the latest chapter in a rivalry etched deep into British boxing lore. The origins trace back to the early 90s when Chris Eubank Jr. and Nigel Benn went to war in the ring, igniting one of the sport's fiercest rivalries. Eubank claimed victory in their brutal 1990 showdown, while the 1993 rematch ended in a controversial stalemate, leaving fans divided and the feud unresolved. Now, their sons stand on the brink of settling an old score, each vowing to bring fireworks to the ring. Eubank Jr., who has stayed sharp and active since the collapse of their 2022 clash, says he's out for revenge, not just for himself, but for the storm that derailed everything last time. Benn, having dedicated the better part of the last 2 years to clearing his name in court, now declares he's primed to unleash a one-sided beatdown. The buildup has been anything but courteous. At a press conference last month, Eubank cracked an egg on Benn's shoulder. An open taunt aimed at Benn's controversial defense that tainted eggs could have triggered his failed test. Since their initial fight was called off, Eubank has stepped into the ring 3 times. After suffering a stoppage loss to Liam Smith, he avenged the defeat in their rematch and later secured a knockout victory over Camille Serrameta toward the end of last year. Meanwhile, Benn has fought twice in the US, earning points victories over Rodolfo Orozco and Peter Dobson in his debut super welterweight bouts.
I was getting asked about my opinion about 10 and 12 rounds, right? These things, and I've had things like that in the force, not anything as silly and ridiculous as that, but you learn from these things and you never do it again. And it's expensive and it slaps you on the bum. And I have had things in the past, not like that, but where I've fucked up and thought, fuck me, if I would have just done that, and it's cost you dough. Yeah. But that's all part of the education. You're always learning.
At 28, he'll step up another weight class to face Eubank at 160 pounds. This move, according to Roy Jones Jr., the legendary fighter and former trainer of Eubank, significantly tilts the odds in favor of his opponent, as noted at the George Groves Boxing Club. Roy Jones Jr. said, "Chris learned in the Liam Smith fight that you can't underestimate nobody, because Liam Smith was not known as a knockout puncher and he got a win over Chris. That woke him up and prepared him for this fight. He takes his lesson and applies it to this fight. He'll be fine." Conor, on the other hand, has to take a page out of his dad's book. The only way he's going to beat Eubank is if he's flat on his back. He added, "I'm not going to outbox him. He's bigger than me. I can't move around and stay away from him because he's the bigger guy. I can't let the bigger guy stop me. I have to stop him because my family's known for punching power. I've got to be true to the sport. My goal is to land a big left hook or overhand right." He has to know that. Chris's job is to just go out there and be Chris, but Conor has to try to gamble and make something happen. Meanwhile, Eddie Hearn is confident that the timing couldn't be more ideal for his fighter to claim a monumental win at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. In 2022, Eubank Jr. entered as a heavy favorite, and the matchup was widely regarded as a mismatch. However, since then, Benn has competed twice at junior middleweight, while Eubank Jr. suffered a knockout defeat in 2023, narrowing the gap between the two fighters. Hearn thinks the time is right for the man he's promoted from the beginning of his career to have the victory of his life. Hearn told The Ring, "I remember the day the fight was pulled. I remember the drama, the aftermath, everything. I said earlier that I actually think it's a big bonus for Conor Benn to be fighting Eubank Jr. now, having been through everything that he's been through. Bigger now? Better." Eubank Jr. has been knocked out in the process as well. "I just think it's the right timing for Conor Benn to win this fight." He further mentioned, "I actually agree with Eubank Jr. that it's not just about the weight. It is actually about skill and ability as well. But all of those things that Chris was saying, Conor is better at than Eubank. He's a better fighter. He's a better puncher. He's got better footwork. Eubank Jr. is at the back end. The money's in sight, everything's in sight. Don't get me wrong, he's a tough kid and he'll give it everything. But don't talk about desire in terms of the comparison between the two." Over the past few weeks, there have been rumors that Benn has performed frighteningly when sparring with much larger men. The 29-year-old has squared off against 168-pound challenger in their sparring on the island of Mallorca. Benn's father Nigel had already alluded to the fact that his son was superior to Skull. Hearn has also affirmed that those sparring sessions were promising for Benn, who who is set to compete at middleweight for the first time in his career against Eubank Jr. He added, "Sparring is not the done thing to talk about, but he looks sensational. And not just against middleweights. We're talking super middleweights, light heavyweights. Sparring is sparring. You get in there on fight night in smaller gloves and anything can happen. We really love our chances. I said before, if you could have just clicked your fingers and got the very best Conor Benn to turn up on Saturday night, that's what we've got. Honestly, the camp of dreams." Hearn then added, "I said to him the other day, he'll be nervous. He's had some big fights, but when you walk out there, I'm not even fighting and I'm nervous. He's just got to control his emotions. I think that's really important." British boxing icon Amir Khan has also offered an exclusive insight into how the highly anticipated grudge match between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. will unfold. Ahead of the highly anticipated match, Khan, a former unified super lightweight world champion, has been monitoring combatant preparations, believing that Benn is the more powerful puncher even after moving up 2 divisions to face Eubank Jr. Khan has pointed out a crucial observation from watching the Destroyer train that could play a pivotal role in their upcoming showdown. Khan told CoinCasino.com, "Conor Benn will be in safe hands because Eubank's not the biggest puncher. He's very technical, but I think Conor might actually be the bigger puncher in that fight by putting a bit of weight on. So I think it's very evenly matched. A good fight for both fighters. I'd say it's 60-40 in favor of Eubank just because of the weight, the height, and the size." He further added, "But listen, anything can happen in boxing. Conor Benn could start fast and could go straight in and knock him out early. The way he's been training, he looks explosive. I've been watching his train for the Eubank fight, and he looks really dangerous. I think he's got that love back again. You need that dancing partner to bring the hunger back, and I think Eubank is that guy." Beyond the familial links, Eubank Jr. versus Benn has been developing for years. It was first scheduled for October 2022. The fight fell through at the last minute after it was revealed that Benn had tested positive for banned substances twice, resulting in a ban from boxing in Britain that lasted until recently. Once the 28-year-old was cleared, his highly anticipated bout with 35-year-old Eubank Jr. was swiftly rescheduled. Tensions have been building ever since, with a February press conference descending into chaos when Eubank Jr. slapped Benn across the face with an egg. This was a jab at the WBC's 2023 claim that elevated consumption of eggs was a reasonable excuse for Benn's adverse drug test results. Just 2 days later, another press conference saw Eubank Jr. threaten Nigel Benn, who had previously placed his hands around the younger man's neck during the earlier mayhem of the week.
I can't see it going past 3 or 4 rounds. I don't even think it's going to go that. I think once he sees the power and the ferocity, if I tell you what he's been doing to them middleweights and super middleweights and light heavies, because they weren't super, they were light heavies. Yeah. Mate, they had their hands full with my son. Yeah. He's just an animal. But one thing I want you to understand, there's no anger involved. Yeah. None of that whatsoever. Yeah. Just his passion, his ferocity, his determination, his will to win. That's my boy.
The two will face off at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. However, even if Eubank Jr. manages to defeat Benn, Khan doesn't believe Next Gen will stand a chance against super middleweight world champion Canelo Alvarez, should that fight happen anytime soon. Khan added, "I think he could make that happen, especially if he beats Benn in good fashion. But Canelo's an animal, man. That's one guy you don't want to with. I've been in the ring with him. I know how good he is. He's a beast. I don't think Eubank wins that fight, not even close." He added, "He's strong, just a solid geezer. You don't want to get hit by him because he hits so hard. The power Canelo has was something else. He literally knocked me out. I didn't feel it. I only saw it later on TV. It was a clean KO, put me to sleep. That was it. End of story." Eubank has faced Liam Smith twice, securing a stoppage in their rematch after being halted for the first time in their initial encounter. In October of last year, he also stopped Camille Cerameta. The 35-year-old is a naturally larger and more seasoned fighter, having faced opponents like Groves at super middleweight, and managed to hold his ground, despite ultimately losing over the full distance. In an interview with Fight Lens, Groves shared that, despite initially backing Eubank, he's now struggling to pick a winner due to everything that has transpired for both men in recent years. Groves said that he didn't want to pick a winner at that moment. He admitted that he had swayed both ways in his opinion. When the fight was first announced, he had believed Eubank might have been too big. However, he noted that a lot had happened over the past 2 years, and felt that perhaps Eubank had already seen his best days. He pointed out that Eubank had avenged his loss against Smith and appeared to have rejuvenated himself. Groves concluded that the outcome might ultimately come down to who could handle the intense build-up better. The boxing world appears divided on the outcome, with some supporting Eubank due to his size and experience, while others, like Ricky Hatton, believe Benn's youth and determination will allow him to rise to middleweight and claim victory. Ben Shalom, the promoter of Boxer, shared his opinions about the impending fight with Betfred, saying that his middleweight, Eubank Jr., has been classy throughout the build-up. Ben Shalom said this when asked whether he believes Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn is the biggest British fight of the year. It is the biggest. It will be the biggest. And I expect Chris Eubank Jr. to do the business. He sold the fight really well and been classy throughout the build-up. I think he's dealt with everything really well because he's a superstar, isn't he? I can't wait. And I think he's going to light it up in Tottenham. It will be a phenomenal spectacle. Eubank Jr. for the win. Shalom then talked about Eddie Hearn. I think we're fine. I've got nothing against Eddie whatsoever. We've got a big fight together on Saturday and he's going to be disappointed. But nothing against Eddie, honestly. Talking about Eddie Hearn claiming that Conor Benn will finish the fight in 6 rounds. Ben Shalom said, I think if Chris wants to, then he finishes it in 6 rounds. I really believe that. I'm glad Eddie's got so much confidence in his man, but Chris is a much superior boxer, a much superior talent, and he will show that on Saturday. Shalom was then asked whether it was disappointing to see Chris Eubank Sr. negatively speak out about his son's fight with Conor Benn. He said, it was, but ultimately he has his own opinions and it is what it is. I didn't like the personal stuff. I think that should stay out of the way, and people need to understand what he's been through and what mental state he could be in at times, especially in an environment like that. For me, I don't want to get involved in that personal stuff. It's not healthy. And Chris Eubank Jr. is focused on his fight. He has his team. He's ready to win, and the personal stuff has got nothing to do. However, the prospect of a major domestic showdown with either Eubank Jr. or Benn might just be the catalyst needed to bring the special one back to the ring.
The size and the long arms, you know, and he's been at a higher level than Conor. You know what I mean? Conor's not got to that level yet, you know, but it's a big fight, it's a good fight, and it's a very interesting one. You know, Conor's training very hard like they both are. It's one of them, it's a pick'em fight, you know, it's a very interesting fight, but I lean towards Eubank in this fight.
If the winner of that fight was offered to you, would you do it? Or think about it?
I'd do it. I'd come back. One more.